Hey, I'm Kayla Lindsey, and I'm going to be doing my Learning Theory Transmediation presentation. We're going to be talking about critical learning theories associated with online learning, and there are four theories that I will be covering throughout this presentation. The Behaviorism learning theory, the Cognitionism learning theory, the Constructivism learning theory, and the Sociocultural learning theory. We're going to start by talking about the behaviorism learning theory in online learning. So when we think about the behaviorism learning theory, the professor's role is to distribute some type of reward or punishment. And by this, we're talking about things such as grades and feedback, the positive and the negative, those things that are going to provoke some kind of motivation within the student. The student's involvement level is a passive participant. In this level, they are not really in charge of taking ownership for anything. They are completing the tasks that are provided for them that are usually pretty systematic with a specific outcome that's desired by the professor, and that's where the reward or punishment would come in, that positive or negative feedback or grade. So talking about extrinsic motivation, that is things such as timely feedback. So when the student receives that feedback from the professor of, hey, great job, that would be that positive reinforcement, or, go back and look at this, you're not doing this correctly, that would be that negative feedback. So then talking about encouragement, this is something really big on that positive reinforcement of students feeling encouraged when they're doing something correctly. That's making them want to continue doing good work so that they're providing that response that the professor is aiming for. Also, supportive materials is something that is very motivating to students. Getting those study guides or model text or graphic organizers, things that kind of give them a scaffold or a starting point to build upon throughout their assignment. It gives them that motivation to know kind of what's expected of them so they can achieve the desired outcome. Learning programs that fit the behaviorism theory are things such as IXL. This is something that we use in the elementary and even high school setting. It is very behaviorism centered, so it's providing instant feedback. Whenever a question comes up, the students automatically know if they got it correct or incorrect. It gives that positive reinforcement such as like a smiley face or a thumbs up or a great job. If they miss it, it'll say something like try again, and that's kind of building that motivation with them to keep working through that. But it also adjusts the content and materials to fit the students' learning needs. So it starts noticing those behavior patterns with the students. It's noticing their levels and what they need to work on, so it can adjust that according to the patterns that it recognizes, and it stores that data, which is good because it starts suggesting things that fit the students' learning needs, as well as grouping them with other students who have similar learning needs so that the professor or teacher can use those things to make instructional decisions to achieve that desired learning outcome. The next learning theory that we're going to talk about is Cognitivism. This learning theory, the professor role shifts a little bit. They are providing students with materials, but it's different from the behaviorism theory because it's not preset. It's not a cookie cutter lesson or material. It is things that it's assisting the students in using multiple strategies and multiple resources in order to retain information. This is the idea that not all students learn the same, and some students need to see material in different ways in order to properly store and retain that information. When we're talking about the students' involvement level with this learning theory, we are talking about the students being active participants. They are taking ownership for their learning. They are self-reflecting throughout the material and assignments. They are self-monitoring and self-checking. So they are really taking on the responsibility of their learning. Now, the professor is still there and is providing them the resources that they need as well as guiding them, but the students are much more active in this learning environment. The learning materials, when we talk about cognitivism, we're talking about the variety of materials like I mentioned earlier, and online tools that address all learning styles. So we're not talking about just a textbook or just a web application. We're talking about having access to multiple resources. So they may use a textbook, they may be using some websites, they may be using different apps, but there's videos and images and graphics, all of those things, so that all learning styles are addressed. And then this learning theory talks a lot about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So we're not just giving them a reward or a punishment, but we're trying to instill the motivation within the learner. So we're talking about things such as curiosity and interest. So investing the students in the project or assignment or the content, making it something that's engaging and interesting to them so that they want to pursue learning about that topic or skill. Goal setting is something that's mentioned very frequently by the Cognitivism learning theorist, because they want the students, like I said, to be invested. So it's not just important because they're going to get a good grade or a bad grade. It's important because they made a goal for themselves and they're invested in seeing that goal achieved. The power of choice is another thing that's mentioned quite frequently, of having the opportunity to feel a little in control of your learning. That's another thing about setting those goals and being invested in the learning. Whenever there's a topic available, there may be multiple avenues a student can take in order to complete the project. They may get to select the text that they use to write the book report on, or select the game that they use to practice that math skill, so that way it is something that they're invested in doing. And feedback is still going to play a large part in this. The students are going to have to learn how to self-check and self-reflect. So still receiving that feedback from the professor is going to be vital for the students to know and gauge how they should be reflecting on the work as they go along. The next learning theory that we're going to talk about is the Constructivism learning theory. So when we talk about Constructivism, the professor is acting as a facilitator, and the student's involvement level is an active participant. This is where we start talking about the zone of proximal development. So we're talking a lot about using background knowledge to build upon ideas, to gain, store, and retain new information. So we're kind of meeting in the middle of, you know a little bit, but I'm wanting you to get to something that you do not know. So you're going to use resources to build upon what you already know to achieve the learning outcome, or to gain that new skill or content information. So a lot of ways that students are motivated through this learning theory is that they're hands-on opportunities. It's things that they are actively engaged in throughout the entire lesson. Real world application is huge because they're seeing a purpose and a meaning for what they're learning. They're finding ways that they can use this in their day-to-day life. And problem solving is another motivation for this. They're given a problem or a scenario, and then they're invested in solving it through engaging activities. Learning for this, like I mentioned earlier, is really just building new ideas using prior knowledge and being able to construct meaning through exploring new ideas, asking questions, collaborating with others, and then reflecting on what they've learned. And then finally, we're going to talk about the sociocultural learning theory. And with this, we're still talking about the professors being a facilitator for this kind of learning. And the student's involvement level is going to stay at that active participant. Motivation for this kind of learning is the social interactions and the engagements. This theory is a firm believer that students need to be working together and with the professor in like a co-learning environment to build new knowledge and to gain understanding. This is engaging for students because it gives them the opportunity to kind of talk through ideas and work through information before presenting or turning something in for a grade. It gives them that confidence, which is motivating for them. And then some learning experiences, we're talking about collaboration with one another, and you'll kind of see the picture that I included of Zoom classes, something since the pandemic that has become very popular, even in college courses. Whenever they are given a group project, they may meet on Zoom just to kind of build those relationships and put a face with the name and collaborate with one another. It still kind of gives that sense that you're in class with these people. They're not just a name on a screen, which is very important for learning, having those connections. It also provides opportunities for diversity. So the thought that everyone has different background knowledge and different life experiences that they can bring to the table and learn from one another. Social media has become a huge piece to the learning experience puzzle. That is something that is very engaging for learners, especially we start talking about middle school, high school, and college. Social media is very prevalent in these students' lives, and finding ways for them to use social media as a learning platform and a way to connect with other people to gain understanding, build knowledge, can be a very powerful tool in online learning. And then, of course, there are different apps that promote collaboration. We're talking about things like Flipgrid and Padlet, where students are able to share their understanding or their information and then comment and respond to other students in their class, to where they're able to kind of build that knowledge and construct meaning together. And the final two slides of my presentations are the references for the images and the two books that I used to put this presentation together. This has been a really eye-opening presentation for me of all the different learning theories that come together to make online learning purposeful and meaningful for students. Thank you.